The following conversation is offered for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, legal, or therapeutic advice, nor as a substitute for professional care. The views expressed are those of the participants and are shared to explore ideas, experiences, and perspectives. Welcome to the Future Reimagined, an exploration of how we move toward greater wholeness and harmony through open hearts and inspired imagination. All right, today I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Michael Ryoshin Sapiro. Dr. Sapiro is a clinical psychologist, ordained Zen Buddhist monk, a meditation teacher, psychedelic psychotherapist, a poet, and an author whose work sits at the intersection of psychology, contemplative practice, and psychedelic assisted therapy. He integrates Buddhist and non dual teachings with modern science and psychotherapy to help people unlearn old conditioning, reconnect with their authentic selves, and awaken the heart, where our deepest wisdom and creativity reside. Dr. Sapiro is also a fellow at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and core faculty in the Psychedelics Today Vital Psychedelic Certification Program. He teaches internationally on transformation, expanded human potential, and psychedelic psychotherapy, and leads retreats around the world. His newest book, Truth Medicine, explores psychedelic psychotherapy as a path toward healing, trauma, and living more truthfully. Dr. Mike, welcome to the Future Reimagined. I'm so glad you're here. Really good to have you. Thanks for joining us. How's your day going so far?
It's great. I had a great chiropractic visit this morning, so I feel loosened up, adjusted,
Nice.
and grounded. And then, my normal morning practices also. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course. What are your normal morning practices?
Oh, I get up, um, meditate pretty much the first thing after bathroom break and water, and usually go to the gym. This morning I did the chiropractor instead, but I have about 3 to 3.5 hours of morning practice before I see clients. So that involves chanting, Buddhist chants, longer meditation practices, and then spending time with my dog, which is a joy of my life. So I have a lot of things I do in the morning to just spend time on my body, my mind before I start serving.
Yeah, that's so important. And
Mhm.
going to the chiropractor, feeling nice and aligned. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I wanted
he's
to,
really good.
great. That's awesome. I wanted to start our conversation about just kind of opening up the dialogue about what it means to be an authentic person. Truth Medicine is a great book, and
Oh,
I
thank
loved it from the practitioner perspective, but also from somebody new to psychedelic psychotherapy. It's a really great introduction, but also for a well experienced psychonaut, there's a lot of gems in there. And I like how the tone is often written to a practitioner, but also to a client or somebody
you.
wanting to explore psychedelics. And a term that you used that really stood out to me towards the beginning of the book was patchwork personas,
Mm.
and how patchwork personas can kind of stand in our way, or we accumulate them as we grow up, and we embody these parts of ourselves that might not be authentic. Can you just unpack that term patchwork persona and what that means along the journey of finding your authentic self?
Sure. So lots in there that you already just said. Excuse me. I think there's inner and outer authenticity. Authenticity might look like how we choose to dress, the tattoos we have, our style, our jobs, the way we relate to people. So the external outer look, outer feel of what's true for us inside. So, you might think, oh, this person's authentic because they're wearing crazy clothes. That's really unique to them. And that's an expression of authenticity. These are expressions or maybe styles or symbols. And I'm also more concerned about internal authenticity. Am I thinking in a way that represents what's true for me? Or is my thinking diluted by conditioning from my religion? Is it, does the culture change the way I think about myself? Does my upbringing have such an influence that the way I think isn't really aligned with how I really am? And that might be we're putting ourselves down, or we're harshly judging ourselves or other people. And when we slow down and we really tap into our more authentic self, our hearts don't usually talk that way. It's usually our minds
Mhm.
that do, the conditioned mind. So I'm very interested in getting people in touch with, well, what is authentic to me? What is a belief? Not just thinking. Thinking is comes out of our beliefs. And so we really look into what are my beliefs truly that are outside of the conditioning of my parents, religion, culture. And we often find people don't know. They go, I don't really know who I am. I had, someone in the book was like, I'm 48 and I don't even know who I am underneath this conditioning. So for me, a patchwork persona is like all of these beliefs we've been given from other people, culture, society that we start wearing on top of us, and all of a sudden we're speaking and acting and thinking from the persona rather than from our true authentic self, which in Buddhism we say there's a non-self, there's a no self. What that means is that the self is really the self is really interdependent. There is no Mike without his parents, without the world itself, without sunlight. But when I'm talking about psychological self, there's something true that we need to discover in ourselves that
Mhm.
is unconditioned.
Yeah, so as the unconditioned self, do you think we come into this world as the true unconditioned, like as our true authentic self, and then as we grow up and take on these patchworks, we start to lose track of what it is, and then it takes the deep work to get back to it, or is it something that grows as we grow?
Well, in Zen, we say there's an original essence. There's a koan, a puzzle that asks us to think about what is our original face before we were born? What do we look like before we were born? And I don't just mean physically, of course. I mean the essence. What is our essence before we were born? And does that essence travel with us? So I believe all of us have an original essence. I don't think there's personality or temperament built into the essence. I think each of us has a unique personality, a unique temperament, and unique gifts and passions that come with us that we develop over time and discover. So I think there is something unique to us that is just ours. And I think there's something that's ephemeral that doesn't even have form or substance. It's an essence that's pure and innocent that we might feel when we're with puppies or babies or children. There's like an essence to a child that that's pure and innocent and formless, that doesn't need to do anything to prove itself. A baby is just precious because it's alive.
Hmm.
And the more we practice, whether that's meditation, dancing, drumming, whatever spiritual practice you're into, often that leads us to feeling the pure essence of the universe naturally. And of course, medicines can do that to us too. That pure essence of nature when you're sitting by a stream. It doesn't have to do anything to prove itself. The stream is just perfect as it is. We have that too within us. But then I do think there are things we develop over time that are unique to only you and unique to only me. The problem is we're getting conditioned by school, culture, religion, our parents, caregivers to think and act a certain way. And we do that to be accepted and to get our love and not to be rejected. And so then we start acting out other people's expectations of us. And that includes, oh, you don't want me to be a dancer? You want me to be a mathematician? Like whatever, you know, then you start acting like a mathematician, but you really want to be a dancer. And then you go on and get a degree in accounting, you become a business person, a banker, but your heart is like, but I want to express myself and dance. I want to do things differently. And then you're in conflict with yourself, depression, anxiety. That's like those are symptoms of not really being in alignment with who you want to be, who you're meant to be. So that's kind of all of this is together, essence, who we can be, and then how we're conditioned out of all of that.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it makes me wonder about what it means for us culturally. Like, what does it mean that our culture so often does not know how to nurture somebody's authentic self, but it oftentimes makes us feel almost like it's dangerous to go out there and present your authentic self? Because I do feel like when, especially as we move into adulthood, we have a, a clear sense. Well, I guess it depends on your upbringing and traumas
Mhm.
that you go through. But personally speaking, I feel like when I was younger in my late teens, I started to have a really clear sense of my authentic self. And then as I showed it, I oftentimes got reflections from my culture of like, we don't know how to deal with that, or no, not that. And I started to, like feel these like barnacles almost of my
Mhm.
patchwork selves. Like, and it makes me think, like, what does that mean of our culture that we don't know how to nurture people's authentic selves? Do you think about that?
Oh, sure, because I get clients who are like, well, who are dampened. Their soul, their spirit is dampened because they want to be something that culture doesn't allow or doesn't support. But when you're talking about marginalization or anything to do with social justice, it becomes very clear that there are ways in which the dominant culture oppresses certain qualities in people and says you cannot be that or you will be hurt. So think about trans culture, gay and lesbian, queer culture, that people are wanting to express themselves in what's true for them, and it's not only not allowed, but people have been hurt and killed over that. And you can see that with the history of African American, the our black culture in America, the slave culture in America. I mean, that it's very clear when you are not what people want, the dominant culture wants you to be, it can be deadly for you. Racism has a deadly effect on people of color in terms of the systemic racism has an effect on increased blood pressure, cortisol, adrenaline responses that lead to more heart disease, just because you do not look like the dominant culture. So these are obvious. These are obvious ways in which, when you do not look or seem like what the dominant culture wants of you, it can be deadly for you. But then there's just ways where in a culture that says that you are worth what you produce, that you are worth you are worth what you achieve.
Hmm.
Then we have to like push ourselves to achieve, to prove ourselves to our father, our mother, who, and then the cultural father or mother who says, if you're an artist and you're not succeeding by making lots of money, you're not really worth a lot. So there's this inherent kind of like message that you have to produce to achieve. And so many clients will come in, and it's not even like the dominant capitalistic culture I'm talking about, but just this overall, you are valued by what you do. And people struggle against that internally because they push themselves to be more. I'm working with a really well-known film director who gets down on himself because he doesn't know how to put drywall up and he doesn't know how to fix his toilet. And it's not like, so I don't either. I hire out for that. I hire people who are really good at that, but I don't beat myself up for it. He beats himself up. Not only is he trying to be the best director there is, he's also now got to be the best toilet plumber, a contractor. It's unreasonable what we put on ourselves, is what I'm telling
Oh man. Yeah, it really is. I feel that a lot too. And that pressure to be valued by what you produce is such a heavy pressure, and I think it makes so many people have anxiety in a really significant
you.
way. And I'm curious, this is kind of a two-pronged question, but I know you work with veterans and first responders, and thank you for doing that work. That's really important work. So I'm curious how what we're talking about shows up uniquely for that population, and then also how you see psychedelics, specifically ketamine, because I know that's
Mhm.
a medicine you work with, how that is a medicine and other psychedelics are uniquely positioned to help veterans and first responders.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time with combat veterans in the special operations community, and then with the police department here in town where I live, and the fire department where I live. So I don't just see clients, I do see therapy clients that are firefighters and police officers and parole and wildland firefighters, but I'm actually embedded in the police department, so I'm on a peer support team. If there's any critical incidences or officer involved shootings, I'm involved in debriefing those incidents. I go and I co-facilitate with some officers giving, and we also often have interdisciplinary debriefs. So we'll have dispatch, paramedics, firefighters, and police all sitting together talking about and processing emotionally the 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 processing the emotional trauma that comes with witnessing some terrible things. And then I'm also on the crisis hostage negotiation team. So I'm actually, when the SWAT team gets called out, the crisis negotiation team gets called out. I'm the psychological consultant helping the negotiator on the team work with the person on the phone who's barricaded or has a hostage. So I'm in there doing the work with these teams. I didn't just want to be a therapist. I wanted to be in the front to see where it's what's happening, to see firsthand what first responders go through so that I can better understand when I am doing therapy, what it's like. So I got my hands in a lot of places. And of course, I also do then ketamine therapy with first responders and veterans. So I'm doing a lot of this all at once. There's a kind of selfless paradigm, a selfless philosophy that first responders will give everything of themselves for their job, and they often leave nothing for themselves. And there's like this drive, I will die for my mission. Literally, a firefighter will sacrifice his or her life, just as an officer will, to serve and protect and be a guardian of the community. And the problem is they don't consider themselves a part of the population they're serving. So they'll often leave their wounds physical. I have dudes who have completely torn shoulders, rotator cuffs, labrum tears, and they won't get surgery because it'll take time away from serving.
Mm.
So that's a physical wound. We have tons of emotional, psychological wounds that come from seeing what they see and doing what they do, and they won't address that because they're not even on their list. When I work with a group of first responders in like a workshop, and we have them list out their responsibilities and who they care for, they don't make their own list.
Mm.
What does that say to your psyche? And so, what does that say to your own precious heart? Hey, dude, you're not important. I
Mhm.
will risk my life for all of this, but I will not do a thing for you. I mean, that's kind of fucked up, right? And so, like, my job is to be like, hey, why are you not included? And do you want AFib, stroke, heart attacks, higher suicide rates? Do you want all of this? You don't have to have all this if you just care for yourself. And so, a lot of my job is teaching them, you matter, you count, your psyche's hurting for this. Please, let's spend time on you now. So that's a huge paradigm shift I'm working in, to get first responders and veterans to see that they matter just as much as those they're serving. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I didn't realize you were on the front lines doing
Mhm.
that type of work as well. That must be such an interesting perspective, and I'm sure you get such a different picture into what they carry, and yourself too. You also are engaged in that work and see probably some really horrific things. Um, so then how do you see psychedelics and specifically ketamine
Yeah.
working to address some of these core wounds? And I really love in the book how you talk about not necessarily just addressing these surface level issues, but really getting to the root cause of it. How do psychedelics get to the root cause of some of these
Yeah.
issues?
Well, I really appreciate how ketamine helps people feel relaxed and feel, for the most part, not everyone ends up feeling, but for the most part, people are like, oh my gosh, I haven't felt so relaxed. Now, remember, we're using a dose that is psycholytic, meaning I'm talking to them the whole time. I do have clients that use higher doses, but then we're not really engaged in psychedelic psychotherapy. We're engaged in psychedelic therapy, and that's fine. It's just different. I'm engaged generally speaking with a person while they're on a dose. So they're kind of in and out of the psychedelic experience. Oh, they might see stars or galaxies or dragons or something. And then I'm like, well, what does that mean for you? Can you explore it? And other times they're going to go into memories and beliefs, and emotions are going to come up. So they're kind of in and out of the psychedelia experience, coming back to the conscious psyche experience, the psyche, what they're feeling, believing, seeing. So I'm helping navigate all of that. So ketamine really does relax that nervous system, and they feel disembodied in a way that, most of us who are traumatized live in a very constricted, fearful, jumpy, bumpy body. Those who are depressed live in a very energyless. Those who are anxious live in a cyclone. in a tornado energy, jackhammer energy. Ketamine takes us out of that enough where we can start relaxing into being, stillness, quietude. And when we're in being and stillness and quietude, our heart can start speaking for us. Hey, I'm really hurt. I'm really grieving. Hey, I'm not done healing from our abuse as a kid. Most of us are like, I'm done. I'm done with that. Everyone who comes here is like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I already processed it. I'm like, nah, you probably haven't the way you think, you know? And what happens in ketamine, they start going, oh my God, I haven't actually looked at this. I've been drinking it or avoiding it, denying it, overworking. All my habits are to protect me from feeling these feelings that are now coming up in session because I'm quiet. And when I'm quiet, the heart goes, I'm grieving, I'm hurting, I'm sad, or I'm resentful, or I have remorse. This is precious treasure. Most people are Amazoning or sexing or eating or drinking their way out of these feelings that are actually precious feelings
Mhm.
that give us messages of things that are not healed. And psychedelics can happily open that for us. And they also, of course, as we can talk about, give us access to the cosmos, to the universe, to the mystery of life itself. So we're getting grand pictures, and then we're also seeing what's mostly true for us that we've been repressing, denying, drinking out of.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about the cosmos. Let's go there. From the Buddhist perspective, and I'm curious, you're an ordained Buddhist monk. Where did you do your Buddhist training? Can you talk about that as part of your background?
Well, sure. 18, 19 years old, 15 years old, I started psychedelic use, and I don't use medicine anymore, just to let the audience know that I think there's a point in time when everything might run its course and you don't need it. There's medicines you need for your illness, and when your illness is gone, you might not need it anymore. That's an example. So I've did psychedelics since I was very young, and I don't find I need them anymore. I keep getting the same messages, and I'm like, okay, I heard it. Now I'm going to live that message instead of
Yeah,
like, I
yeah,
don't need to keep hearing the same message over again. Because when you use a boat to cross the river, you don't carry the boat on your back. You
yeah.
let it go. Thank you
I
for,
love how
you know.
Alan Watts says, "When you get the message, you hang up the phone." You know.
Yeah, and you want to, because you don't want to be dependent on more and more medicine and more psychedelic trips. I got what I needed. I'm very grateful. And it's like, now let me live and practice what I've learned. But I did start very young at 15. And by 18, I was exploring Buddhism and Taoism and kind of other cosmologies that show behind the scene, behind the matrix. You see what. And so Buddhism was one of the practices, one of the traditions that I fell into when I was around 18. And I'd found myself a teacher. And by 23, I was starting to practice in monasteries in Oregon. 24 to 25, I lived in a monastery, Dharma center in Oregon. And then I did Peace Corps in Thailand and um, changed tradition from Zen to Theravadan Buddhism, which is in the Thai forest tradition. And I was a monk for a short period of time in the Thai forest tradition. And then I studied with that teacher for the rest of my Peace Corps service. And then studied with James Baraz and other Thai-oriented Buddhists. And then I came back to Zen about 3 years ago. I had a feeling like I missed the real quiet simplicity of Zen. And I reached out to my teacher who I'd been studying with for quite a while from my early days. And we prepared me for ordination. And I did that so that I could remember, like really have something to guide me as I wake up. Oh man, you have vows. Let's work toward those every day. Let's aspire to live these vows. I don't look like a monk and I don't live in a temple because I work at a police department. And that'd be really weird to have flowing robes. But my heart, I have my robes, but my heart is wrapped in the robes. And it reminds me, man, be kind when you're speaking. Hey, you're pissed off right now. Tend to that. Don't let it come out your mouth. People think you're a monk, you're not pissed off. That is just untrue. We're human beings. Like maybe I'm pissed off less and less and less, and I'm anxious less and less, but I still get anxious and angry. But what do I do with that anger and anxiety? And and taking the vows gives me what to do with that. Oh, you do something with it, and you don't let it come out through behavior, through your mouth, through actions. So I mean, I teach this when I'm working with clients too. What do they aspire toward, and how can the practices we're using in psychedelics therapy and in psychology merge together to help them do what I'm talking about, to live a life that's more thriving, more at ease, more peaceful. So yeah, Buddhism underlies everything in my life and has for a very, very long time, and of course influences the way I do psychedelic psychotherapy.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the intersection of Eastern philosophy and wisdom traditions and sort of esoteric traditions in general and psychedelics and entheogenic use. And I'm curious about your perspective as a Buddhist monk um, on the precept in Buddhism. I think it's the fifth precept that talks about abstaining from intoxicants or any substances.
Mhm.
And then there's also another school of thought, like in the book Zigzag Zen,
Mhm.
that talks about how we can integrate psychedelic healing with a Buddhist perspective. So, what are your thoughts on that?
So weird. I knew you were going to ask me that today. And I was in my hot tub. Part of my morning is sometimes I soak and just listen to the morning birds, and I love it. And I have a lot of trees around my garden in my yard. And I, for some reason, I was reflecting on this question of intoxicants. The vow is not using intoxicants to change the quality of your consciousness, that it becomes dull. Um, you don't want to dull your consciousness. Well, different traditions use the idea of intoxicants as substances that intoxicate you, like alcohol and drugs. But yet, when you really look at the aspiration, it's about not becoming intoxicated by things. And that also includes emotional states like shame and pity and resentment and anger. And so when we're very much limiting to, are you drinking or smoking? Like, what about sugar? Then where does that end? Sugar, nicotine, caffeine, fake foods that change your consciousness. If you eat a big McDonald's meal, you're going to see sluggishness in your mind. You're gonna watch it. You're gonna go, my mind is sluggish. If you're gonna eat a really healthy, wholesome meal of grains and fruits and good fats, you're going to see energy. You're going to see a clarity. It's just very clear when you're monitoring yourself, when you put a substance in your body, it has an effect, whether that be sugar, a fruit, nicotine. You just monitor and watch. But what happens when you have an internal thing you're addicted to? Shame, pity, self righteousness. That is intoxicating. People get intoxicated by their desires. That's something we also want to aspire to go. I don't want to be intoxicated by my anger, by my shame, just as much as I don't want to be intoxicated by an external substance. I don't want to be intoxicated by an internal state of being either. So, yes, can some substances, psychedelics, lead to kind of like abuse? Absolutely. Ketamine at home has high abuse rates.
Mhm.
Um, there are substances that can lead to abuse for sure. And people can then, I have a friend who did 54 ayahuasca retreats, but didn't integrate anything from any of those. That's an abusive, somewhat behavior. I'm going to abuse this medicine. And by the end, by the way, the medicine was saying, stop coming here, stop using this. He stopped doing it because the message was very clear. You're not getting out what you think you want. He was addicted to the search. Please, is there something more? Instead of going, I learned, what do I need to do to integrate this learning? So the compulsion, the intoxication was more searching, more searching. So when we're looking at that vow, you see how I'm breaking it apart. It's not just like, do you do a substance or not do a substance? Is what intoxicates you and what do you need to let go of so you're not intoxicated by things and you have a free, clear consciousness.
Yeah, I love that distinction. And it's almost like, to me, psychedelics can be a really powerful mirror for reflecting those intoxicating aspects of yourself, or what you're addicted to, what you're attached to. It's not necessarily the psychedelic is the intoxicant. It's almost like it acts as a mirror for it.
Mhm.
Um, and you just brought up the power and importance of integration, because we can have these insights and realizations, but without the proper integration, it can drift away. What's your personal style on integration? How do you approach integration?
Well, I wrote about it in a book, have a whole chapter on how I work with people coming out of psychedelic experiences or even meditation retreats. I ask us to reflect. What did you learn? What did you realize? What did you feel? What did you notice? So we're having lots of prompts. I have a whole list of prompts in my book that are like geared toward helping the person who just had an experience reflect on the experience, come up with insights, and then put those into practice. So you have an experience, you learned something, we want to codify that, we want to write it down, we want to systematically like go, this fits in here in my life, this fits in here in my life. Maybe I'm a negative, I talk negatively to myself, so there's negative self-talk I want to work on. Maybe there's, wow, I'm really judgmental of other people and I push them away. Maybe I want to work on recognizing that. There's a million things that can come out of your sessions. We want to start like putting them into themes, writing about it, and then going, how do I want to take one or two of these things and turn them into sustained new behaviors, new ways of being? We don't want to take all of them and go, now you got, go, because people get overwhelmed. It's like going into Trader Joe's. I use this a lot, going into Trader Joe's without a list. You're like,
Yeah.
uh, and then you have 5 bags of fucking snacks that and no
Yeah.
substance. That's what I do.
Yeah.
You got to go with the list, otherwise it's overwhelming. Oh yeah, I totally need those chocolate covered pretzel thingies. You don't, but maybe. Uh, so
Yeah.
integration is like, oh my gosh, I learned all this stuff. What is really core to me? What is going to help me be authentic? What's going to help me thrive? Or what's going to help me heal? And then we're going to take one or two of those things and create some new patterns and habits and ways of being that we move forward with for months, if not years of your life. Months and years of your life after your psychedelic experience, you're going to be building a new way of being, building a new way of thinking.
Yeah, I love that. So many powerful, profound insights I've had from medicine journeys, even years ago. It is still with me. I'm still actively working on it. It's still an active part of my daily practice to really analyze it and sort of polish those little parts of myself that
Exactly.
that I know are that are no need the love. They need the truth and the light. And yeah, I love that. I want to shift gears just a little bit. There's an interesting part of your book where you talk about intergenerational trauma
Mhm.
and how psychedelics can be a powerful tool to help you recognize that maybe what you're working through is maybe not your own. It might be passed down through epigenetics from your ancestors.
Mhm.
And you mentioned your own personal reflection. Could you share a little bit about your experience with recognizing your own intergenerational trauma?
Yeah. So I'm a third generation Holocaust survivor. So meaning my grandparents were in the Holocaust. My grandmother was in Auschwitz. They were Hungarian and taken from their homes. My grandfather was, because he spoke German, Russian, and Hungarian, the Nazi army conscripted him. He was a slave soldier in the Nazi army, and he was made to translate as this group of SS were going around doing their awful things. He had to witness it and then translate for them. And as the Russians captured that group that he was in, and he ended up in a Russian prisoner of war. And as the war was liberated, he came back to the village. And my grandmother, she was in Auschwitz and she was responsible for carrying bodies to the incinerators. And in order for her to survive, she had to pinprick herself and put blood on her cheeks to look alive, to look um, like, she was healthy enough to continue work, because if you weren't able to work, they just murdered you immediately. And as they were murdering so many also. This is very deep and dark stuff, but this passes down to us, passes through behaviors in parenting toward my mother that my mother picked up and passed on, very anxious, hesitant, and then really strong and F you to whoever, because once you get out of that situation, you're like, I'm not going to let anyone do that again. And that's awesome and strong and resilient, but it can also translate to being really impersonal and not very, personable. So
Hmm.
some of that stuff gets passed down through behaviors that are modeled. Other stuff is passed down through changes in the DNA, which DNA unlocks through experience and then passes itself down through the generations. So it takes experience to unlock some potential, positive and negative potential, meaning strength and resiliency is passed down, as well as trauma responses, nightmares, startle responses. So I recognized growing up safe in Chicago area because I was safe in the suburb. I had startle responses, anger, irritability. I had terrible nightmares. And it wasn't until my 30s where I was really studying this as in my doctoral program, intergenerational transmission trauma, where I recognized a lot of what I'm experiencing inside my psyche and body, they're not mine. I've had my own traumas and some death defying experiences. So I have my own PTSD. But I shouldn't be dreaming of Nazis. I didn't grow up in Hungary and go, why am I dreaming of Nazis? Why is my cousin dreaming of Nazis? It's because these, I'm not separate from my grandmother. Yes, I have a different body and temperament and personality, but I'm also her. And my grandfather passed down through my mother. I'm also my dad's parents passed down through him. We are all connected, literally. We are not as separate individuals as we think. And because we think we're separate, we get surprised. Why am I acting like my dad? Well, your dad lives in you. You can't, that's why in Buddhism, there's no concept of a single self. The self that we are is completely connected to the world around us, to our ancestry, to our parents, to the foods you eat and the soil, the quality of soil that the food comes in is in you. You can't take apart any of this stuff. So that's why in Buddhism we say there's a non-independent self, what they call non-self or no self. And so I woke up to all of this in myself and realized, okay, is my grandmother acting out of me or is this my own? Is this something that I can let go of and go, I don't have to respond? Or is this something I have to work on because it's my own BS, my own stuff? That's what I help people recognize in our work is like, what's yours and what's your ancestry?
Hmm.
It's amazing to watch people discover. It's empowering. Hey, this is mine. I'm going to work on it. Hey, this is my mom talking through me. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't want to be like that version of my mom was, who is that version of her grandmother.
Yeah, and there's so much relief that I've seen when people recognize, oh man, all this stuff that I'm carrying, it's not mine. It's even though it's very real in your system, it's not mine. So, what kind of tools do you use to help parse that out, or is that challenging sometimes?
Well, it can be, but it all just takes awareness of what's truly yours and what's not yours. And it's, of course, in the beginning, we don't know. We're just acting out. And when we start slowing down and becoming quiet and the heart tells us things, I remember getting upset at a partner once and I had to go into my bedroom to like give myself a timeout so I didn't act out because I was really triggered. And I got quiet. I sat on my bed. I'm like, Mikey, you're going to timeout so you don't do anything stupid or say something hurtful. And in my timeout, I meditated and I heard myself saying things to my partner in my mind that I recognized immediately. This is how my dad treated me. This is my dad's voice. This is not me. I don't want to talk that way to a person I care about. I have no interest in talking and putting someone down that way because it really hurt the way my dad put me down. It really hurt the way he told me how disappointing I am to him. And I know I can use that toward others and really hurt them, like, you really disappoint me. And that person goes into shame, and I cause it on purpose, like my dad did. I don't want to do that. It's not in my character. I literally heard it and I'm like, oh man, that is my dad's programming arising in this conflict that I'm having. So I'm in a conflict and I hear programming enacted in a conflict that is not mine. It is my dad's. And so I can go, I'm not going to play that forward. I just need to calm down and say, hey, I'm hurt by this. I'm going to go back and do what's true to me, which is the thing you said or what happened is I'm hurting. I felt disrespected. And now we're in a really positive place to work through a conflict. And I'm not using an old habit that's not even mine. That's a personal example of how we will help slow down, watch yourself, and recognize what is yours and what is not yours.
Yeah, thank you for sharing these stories. I really appreciate it, and they resonate so much. And I've had so many experiences similar where I'm noticing, oh, this is a pattern. This is my dad, similar to exactly what you just said. I hear myself say these things. I'm like, where does that come from? Oh, yeah, I inherited it. Um, in our last few minutes, I'm curious if you could talk about what you're working on at IONS at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and
Oh.
how you got involved working with them.
Oh, they're an amazing group of people. They're the biggest thinkers I've ever met. Well, that's not true. The mystics I've met actually have no boundaries. The mystics I've met in the mountains, the hermit monks, the Sufis, they are wide open space.
Mhm.
The scientists I know at the Institute of Noetic Sciences have the biggest minds I've ever met because they can think beyond what normal science usually thinks about. So, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, presentiment, psychic phenomenon, near death experiences, death of the body, but consciousness continues to live. They study all of this through a scientific lens, and I'm fascinated by it. Super skeptical. When I first joined them like 15, 16 years ago, I was like, I don't think so. I don't know if I think any of this. But then I just started watching the way they operate. Really good people interested in spiritual and human potential, expanded consciousness experiences. They're like studying this, and I was like, oh, that's incredible. Because in the Yoga Sutras, written like 2,000 years ago, they wrote about psychic phenomenon as some enhanced capabilities that come with deep practice. So I studied yoga for many years, the yoga philosophy, and they talk about these incredible gifts you can have of reading minds and sensing people's thoughts and sensing their emotions that come when you're really attuned. Well, Institute of Noetic Sciences really studies the science of that, studies of mental telepathy, mental connection, heart to heart connection. I got into it because I was in my doctoral program and I was longing for something way more than Western psychology was giving. I wanted to know how the mind is not limited. Psychology often looks at how it's limited. Noetic sciences look at the unlimited potential of the human mind, and I'm much more interested in our unlimited potential than I am how we're limited. Um,
Yeah, I love that.
so I don't know what I do with them. I sometimes help with studies. I sometimes lead global meditations. I'm a fellow, so they're interested in the work I do on consciousness and psychedelics merging with spirituality. I've been there probably 15 some years now and a fellow for maybe 10 of that. And I just contribute best I can to their work and they support what I do in the world. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Is there something I read something that you're working on, working with your future self and your past self, and the
Mm.
word time travel was in there. I'm
Oh,
curious,
yeah.
is that something? Is that an active project that you're working on?
Well, that was Dr. Julia Mossbridge. Y'all want to look her up. She's a genius and heartfelt scientist. Many years ago, she was a fellow as well at IONS, and we were both presenting our work on time travel, on mental time travel. That is our ability to take ourselves back to the past, bring this current self to the past that needs us the most. And we both shared stories of working with people. One of mine was a woman who, as a child, was locked in a closet for like 3 days at a time. Pretty torturous stuff. And she said she had been visited by somebody who helped her stay like sane during that time. And I was doing a meditation with her one day, a deep meditation of, we're going to embody, go back. You're going to hold that kid. You're going to hold her. You're going to love on her because she was alone and she needs you. No one else was there for her. So we did this where she mentally went back to her past and brought her whole self, sat in the closet and held her. And when she woke up, woke up from the meditation, tears were streaming down. And she said she was the person that when she was,
Mhm.
You understand? She was the
Amazing.
person who visited her when she was a kid.
That's wild. It
Yeah.
makes me think of my wife is a Reiki practitioner, and she talks about how you can give Reiki to your past self. And I've always kind of wondered about that, or to your future self.
Mhm.
But I love that story.
So this is how we work going backward. I mean, that gave me chills, and that was years and years ago, and still makes me go, "Wow, really? For real?" But wow. And then I also helped develop a way of future making, going toward the future in a visualization where we're seeing our future self engaged in what we've always wanted to be doing, anywhere in the world, doing whatever the heart has longed for, and we're seeing it. And it takes time to practice this, but the more you practice seeing your future self, the more that becomes a concrete reality for you to move into. And I also have the future self turn toward ourself, and the future self tells us, here's how you get to where I'm at. I have done that. I have created a radio show based on that future self turning to me and going, you you have a radio show. Here's how you do it. I was like, really? And it became a thing. I mean, we have it in us, whether it's the real future self, like, is that a real entity or is it just our imagination? I don't care, because the more we imagine, the more we actually work with this part of us that's in the future. Maybe it really is a future self that we're tapping into. The point is that we have a resource that now will help us drive toward the thing we want the most. That's what's important to me.
I love that. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I named my podcast "The Future Reimagined" to kind of look into the future and look for what motivates me and what projects I want to bring in, and kind of communicating with my future self of like, yeah, you can do this, like you were saying. Here's how you do it.
Yes,
Um,
exactly that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, last question for you: what gives you the most hope about the future as you look to the future? What gives you the most hope, and what do you kind of envision for our sort of collective future?
I don't often feel hope for the future. Um,
Yeah, I can resonate with that.
doesn't mean I don't work hard, doesn't mean I don't put all my resources in, but we have patterns that the world keeps playing out. And in Buddhism, there's the patterns are greed, hatred, and delusion. Greedy, wanting, craving, hateful, contentiousness toward the other, toward the stranger, and then delusion, not seeing clearly that there is no stranger. That I heard a Sufi tell me, it's like being we're all in one boat, but you're putting holes in the other side of the boat, going, that's not on my side. We're all sinking. So do I have real hope for humanity to make huge shifts and changes? I'm not sure, but I know that the more we do our work, like we're talking about, the more we end up helping others naturally. So the more I realize my interdependence with others, the more I understand my well being is dependent on your well being, the less I can do harm to me or to you naturally. I just naturally, it's not because I'm amazing, enlightened person, I don't want to hurt you. I mean, what it comes down to is we are literally the same thing, all in one boat. We have to take care of each other. We have to, and I have to take care of me. I'm important too. I want to take care of you. You're important. So I don't know if I have hope, but I do know practices work, and I know the more all of us collectively do this, there'll be less putting holes in our boat,
Yeah, I love
more
that.
patching up the ones that are there.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that answer, and thank you so much for making time to be on the podcast today. Really good to meet you,
Oh,
and
yeah.
have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you all do well and enjoy my book if you get it. And thanks for having me on with you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.